How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate ourselves ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great Masters,
great Masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
saints of all religions,
saints of all
we
religions,
humbly bow before thee,
we humbly bow before
and
thee,
invoke your presence.
and invoke your presence.
Bless and guide our meditation,
Bless and guide our meditation,
our service,
our service,
our devotion,
our devotion,
our lives,
our lives.
with your living presence.
With your living presence,
We choose thee,
we choose thee,
and we choose to share thee
and we choose to share thee
with all.
with all.
Om. Peace. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning again, friends. Have a seat.
Brave were the people who lived in these hills. Brave the great warriors who confronted the foe to defend what is holy, to defend what is true. Our Lord on mankind did this duty bestow. Glad all our children who people these hills, glad in the vision their hearts understand what became of past struggles. Now the records are still, but courage still lingers, giving strength to the land. Men hunger for riches, for power, and for fame. By favor they think they will grow. The battles they fight, the victories they win, are never the victories they know. Brave were the people who lived in these hills. Brave the great warriors who confronted the foe to defend what is holy, to defend what is true. Our Lord on mankind did this duty bestow. Our Lord on mankind did this duty bestow.
Welcome to our Sunday service. Welcome to those joining us online as well. My name is Dharmadevi, and this is Narayan. And I'm reading to you from Rays of the One Light weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. And this week's topic is the promise of the scriptures. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 15, we read the famous parable of the prodigal son. Jesus tells of the man who took the wealth bestowed on him by his father and squandered it in foreign lands where he fell into evil ways. At last, repentant, he returned to his father's home. When his father saw him, he was, Jesus tells us, moved with compassion, and ran and fell upon his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Fetch quickly the best robe and put it on him, and give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and bring out the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and make merry. Because this my son was dead, and has come to life again. He was lost, and is found. And they began to make merry. Small-hearted human beings, identified as they are with their little egos, give exaggerated importance to any slight they receive from others. Thus, they imagine God, like them, to be petty, unpardoning, and vindictive. In God's eyes, however, when human beings go astray, there is nothing to forgive. All of us are aspects only of his own self. He who made us resides in us. He is not far away from us in some far-off heaven. His call to us always is to return to our home within. The way of return is described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. Supreme blessedness is that yogi's who has completely calmed his mind, controlled his ego-active tendencies, rajas, and purged himself of desire, thereby attaining oneness with Brahma, the infinite spirit. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
I'd like to start with one of Master's whispers from eternity. And this one is, save me from the shipwreck on my ocean of dreams. I was shipwrecked on the storm-tossed ocean of mere dreams. My vessel of happiness was shattered utterly. Struggling, I tried to swim through those tossing waves of sadness and suffering. Then, suddenly, a little raft of hope, wafted to me by thy winds of mercy, came floating to me. I grasped it and held on. Little by little, floating thereon, I touched at last upon the golden isle of peaceful silence. Nymphs of thy blessings met me and took me to thy safe presence of eternal reassurance, beyond all waves of false rising hopes and crashing disappointments. That whisper reminded me of an experience that I had recently. Dharmadevi and I visited the Sequoia National Forest. I'm sure some of you have been there. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And there's the giant forest there, which just seems like another world. And the trees are so majestic. They are like these immortal giants. In fact, John Muir, the great naturalist, described them as that. He said the giant sequoias are seemingly immortal. He said, fire kind of helps them. And in fact, when the National Forest Council there, the people that take care of the park, when they tried to contain the fires too much, it wasn't good for the forest. And they found actually that allowing fire and purification to happen was something that was regenerative. And nature is intelligent. Who knew, right? But when we were there, I had such a blissful experience just being with these giant trees. They really inspire silence. And when you see a giant sequoia, you're like, wow. That's how strong my spine should be. The yogis talk about having the danda, the staff, the straight spine. Well, the giant sequoias have that reflected for us. But we were there, and we were walking through this trail, and there was a little brook. And just a little brook making a little, as brooks do, trickling sound. And it reminded me, the Swami Kriyananda has an affirmation on self-expansion. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in the breeze. Renouncing my little egoic self, I expand my great soul self everywhere. And I just felt for a moment just this touch of God's beauty in nature, and just, wow, actually that's what Swami meant, to genuinely feel yourself in the flowing brooks. You know, this is what we are aspiring towards as yogis, as lovers of God, to feel our heart in other people's hearts, not just in the flowing brook of nature, but in the flowing brook of other devotees, of every person, of all the pain and suffering that's going on in this world. And of course, that's what this reading today is all about with the prodigal son, why we don't feel God's plenty and God's bounty. Goes contrary to the dogma of we're born in sin, right? This is the prodigal son is actually saying, no, you are a child of light. And that it was, well, how did we get so far away from the light? You know, so often, right, we want to say, I didn't ask for this. Why me? Dharmadevi and I have been doing these karma workshops the past few days, right? There's that knee-jerk reaction, right, of the ego. I didn't ask for this. Actually, maybe you did. Because on some level of our consciousness, we actually invite those circumstances. You know, that's the truth of it. It's like when I first learned to drive stick shift in my neighborhood, I had this little Toyota Tercel, it was a 4-speed. And I felt like Mario Andretti going around like this 1-mile loop in my neighborhood. I felt so free, you know? But that's not the real freedom. When we have compulsion from desire, that's what binds us. So really remember, we are the makers of our own destiny. We are co-creators with Spirit. So come back to what Master said about willpower. And remember, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And that the way he defined will is desire plus energy directed towards a goal. You know, think of, Gyandev once said, Swami Gyandev said one time, think of willpower as one power. Right? You could also think of willpower as willingness power. What do you really want? And what are you really willing to put out the energy to do? I wanted to share something Master said along these lines that we found so inspiring as we were doing these karma classes. By the way, Master used to say, I'm sick of hearing about karma. You know, because so often people use that as an excuse, right? Oh, it's my karma to be such and such. It's my I had this friend in New York. His name was Pushpendra Sharma, so he used to joke, what is my karma? What is my dharma? I am Pushpendra Sharma. But listen to what Yogananda says. As long as you enjoy living and acting in this dream of delusion, so long will you go on for incarnation after incarnation, experiencing the pains and pleasures of this world and this body. The Bhagavad Gita describes it as a great wheel, endlessly turning. If, however, you desire strongly to get out, you must be released. Remember, freedom is your eternal destiny. I found this passage so hopeful and so inspiring that if we desire, what do we want? So if we do want freedom, then we must be released. That fills me with hope. I don't know about you. Of course, you know, there's parts of us that need to catch up with that that truth. Somebody, maybe all of you heard Swami Kriyananda's chant, I want only thee, Lord. And one time Gyandev again was talking about that. He said, sometimes when I chant that, there's a part of me that says, liar, liar, pants on fire. But there's deep truth in that. What we need to do is take the liar, liar pants on fire and offer them into the fire of wisdom. Right? That's how Master used to say that past seeds of bad karma cannot germinate when they are burnt up in the fire of wisdom. This is what he was talking about with Kriya Yoga, with deep prayer and meditation. That this is the real fire rite that Krishna is talking about in the Gita. He's talking about offering ourselves. And so often, we hear this, self-offering. Well, how do you do that? This is where the science of yoga is so powerful and so practical and so helpful. It's that the yogis are saying, and Krishna is telling us the way out in this reading as well. The other side, how he describes the yogi, remember here, supreme blessedness. When you take a look at the pictures of the masters, that's why that's the one and only photograph of Lahiri Mahashai. And Lahiri talked about in Autobiography of a Yogi that when one gets into deep meditation or a deep state of calmness, that the eyes are unblinking. And you can go up after service, you should look, because that one's the painting. This is actually the photograph up here on the altar. And you can see his deep calmness and his deep bliss. And that's what Krishna is talking about in this reading here. That supreme blessedness. The yogi who is calm, the ego rajoguna, which is the ego activating tendency, restlessness. We need that. We need the energy, but we want raja, sattva. We want to take the energy inward and upward, not down and out. Like Jyotish used to say, it's like the difference between Pavarotti and St. Francis. You want to take that energy inward and upward in devotion. And how do we do that? Remember this power of our choice, of our will. I think I understand a little bit now why Swami paired the affirmation of moral vigor, the choices I make, the decisions I make in life, having that it's our conscious choice, to take ownership of what's happening. I met a friend a couple of weeks ago, a woman that is confined to a wheelchair, such a sweet lady. And we first spoke on the phone, and so she asked if we had an elevator, and I assured her we have an elevator. It works. We've been here for 2.5 years. We've never had any problems with the elevator. She was coming to service. She came. The elevator didn't work that day. And she left a voicemail. I felt horrible. And so I wound up having a conversation with her like Monday or Tuesday after that service. This is a few weeks ago. And she was so cheerful and so calm about it. She said, that's okay. It just wasn't meant to be. And I said, I promise you, I'll check with the property manager. I'll call you back to make sure it's working, which I did, and called her back. And thank God, she came back. And she inspired me to go on a complaining fast. Because when I met her, there wasn't a tinge of anything, the elevator, this, like nothing. It's complete duck skin. And I said, I'm going on a complaining fast. So Dharmadevi and I started this complaining fast. And since we're coming up to Thanksgiving, we're saying it's a complaining fast, which leads to a gratitude feast. But your ego, it likes to play games. I wasn't complaining. I was just observing. Or, not that I'm complaining. It's good to play games with ourselves like this, because then when we actually catch ourselves doing it, we say, wait a minute, I'm doing the thing that I was actually joking that I don't do. Right? So this is why it's good to have a sense of humor about oneself. But this story of the prodigal son, it's reminding us of God's embrace. That there is no harsh judgment from God. That whenever the soul decides to turn back, Swami Kriyananda has a song, Living Water, right? He can redeem you from every evil. Friend, only think of him. Walk by his side. It's so simple. The way Sri Yukteswar described God, do you remember there's this one way in autobiography, he called him the prime simplicity. God is simple, he's childlike. And that's why Vanamali Devi, our friend in India, beautiful Krishna Bhakti soul, she's written a number of books about Shiva and Divine Mother and Krishna and these things, but she was talking about Hanuman. And Paul has told some of the beautiful stories about Hanuman during Diwali. Hanuman represents the heart, devotion. And she was talking about why Hanuman has gained in popularity in modern times. You think we just have Rajaguna, right? We have restlessness, people all over the place. But Hanuman just has that simple, just that simplicity of just his heartbeat is Ram, Ram. It's just Lord, God, God, God. That's all that's on his mind. And taking that kind of simple approach to our spiritual life. And it's important for us to use our will in that conscious and loving way. There was a strange story that Hare Krishna Ghosh told. Hare Krishna was Yogananda's nephew, or nephew, I believe. And he was a great soul. He lived there actually at 4 Garpar Road, Master's childhood home, after Master left the body. And when some Ananda pilgrims were going there, he told them the story that when Yogananda went back to India in 1935-36, there was a man that wanted to come into 4 Garpar Road for his blessing, and Yogananda just held up his hand. And the man's, not allowing him to come in, the man's jaw was disfigured. He said, "You can't come in until you apologize for what you did." And so going back some 15 years, around 1920, before Yogananda left India for America, this man had spoken out outwardly, I don't know the circumstances, against Lahiri Mahashaya. And Yogananda said to him, "You'll have to suffer for your words." And after that, this man his face and jaw became disfigured. And then so it wasn't some 15 years or so later that he came back in repentance to the Master. And then Yogananda allowed him to come in, and he, with true humility, and asked for forgiveness. And Yogananda blessed him. And in 15 days, that man was healed. We don't realize that. Now, was that the Master doing it? Was it his karma? We don't realize the power. Remember, thoughts are things. Thought is karma as well. And so it starts with the power of our own thoughts and feelings. And that's why if we can harness our will, our feeling nature, our intelligence with that simple love of God, then it takes everything in its wake. And we don't have to be concerned about, oh, my karma this, my karma that. Because when we come before God with that kind of I will life force to charge, right? When we want to draw that energy into ourselves, when we say that this is what I choose consciously, every week, right? We hold up this candle. I choose thy love. I choose only thee. When we make that conscious choice, like he's telling us here, you must be released. I was sharing that other passage from the autobiography this morning that Yogananda said, the day he wills, he is set on the path to freedom. I just find that so inspiring. The day, if that's what we want, that desire has to be fulfilled. And then we don't have to worry about the desire for the ice cream cone and the good food and all these things. Like Master said, when ecstasy comes, everything goes. So what is the promise of the scriptures? It's the promise of our own immortality. And God chooses those who choose him. So let's choose him now and forever. God bless you.
For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I